Well, hello everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to this session, which is entitled Towards the Establishment of World Investment for Development Alliance. I'm Sean Doherty with the World Economic Forum, and I must say I'm very excited by this session because it's going to be essentially a live brainstorming between some of the leading actors in international investment policy and practice on how we can better collaborate to support investment for sustainable development. Now, this is very important because our global savings are not being put to use through sustainable international investments as much as we would like, so as to drive the development that we need. In fact, there's a worrying line in today's Global Investment Trends Monitor, which reads the number of SDG relevant investment projects in LDCs continues to decline precipitously. So hopefully by working together across businesses, governments, international organizations, regional groups, academia, and civil society, we can overcome this and achieve greater positive impact. Now, initial indications are that there's a fair amount of interest in building more collaboration. In fact, at very short notice, a wealth of great speakers have agreed to come together and contribute to today's conversation. So I thank all of them. We're going to hear today from James Chan, who is the Director of Investment and Enterprise at Unctad, from His Excellency Sokchandra Sophia, who is the Minister attached to the Prime Minister and Secretary General of the Council for the Development of Cambodia, Marcus Till, who is the President for Africa of Robert Bosch, Ivan Nimek, who is the Acting Practice Manager for Investment Climate at the World Bank Group, Anna Novak, Head of the Investment Division at Unctad, Rajesh Agarwal, who is the Chief of Business and Trade Policy Section at the International Trade Center, Fahad El Gagawi, President of the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies, Shiza Charles Chiuma, who is the Acting Director for Industry, Mining and Entrepreneurship of the African Union Commission, Rupa Chanda, Director of Trade, Investment and Innovation Division, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, and Natalie Bernasconi Osterwalder, Executive Director for Europe, Director of the Economic Law and Policy Program at the International Institute for Sustainable Development. So I thank all of you warmly in advance and remind you that this session, though it will be high-powered, is only 1 hour long, and so we'll need to be fairly brief in our comments. So firstly, James, congratulations on launching the World Investment Forum. And please, can I ask you to share with us your vision for this World Investment for Development Alliance to kick us off? Over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Sean. Distinguished panelists, fellow collaborators from the agencies worldwide, and also the participants. This is a great pleasure for us together to co-present the idea of the World Investment for Sustainable Development Alliances. And in fact, the possible establishment of this alliance is in response to the need for a dedicated stakeholders platform for international investment relations. And this alliance is particularly relevant today, consisting the setbacks of globalization, the Sustainable Development Goals imperative, and the crisis for multilateralism in economic governance. So the idea of this, in short, what we call WIF, is supposed to be a co-created, co-developed, and co-implemented by the institutions present today, who are going to speak on the behalf of their agencies. And through this alliances, the existing partners and the collaborations, we will fulfill our mission, and the mission is to promote sustainable and inclusive investment through an open and structured network of multiple stakeholders drawn from the whole range of investment for development community. So by working together, the involved stakeholders will create a transformational partnership that will jointly identify, define, and address key investment challenges and opportunities, and foster and accelerate sustainable transformation and generate development impacts. So this is kind of engagement of joint advocacy, joint organization, and joint actions among the participating agencies. And the WIDA's vision is investing in prosperity for all. So the operation aspect is a kind of a model of multi-stakeholders in an effort to drive economic growth and sustainable development through investment. So WIDA pursues its mission through creating the synergies among the stakeholders based on their shared objectives. In terms of activities, we're thinking that this alliance's activities consist of holding biennium global events, and initially to be held in connection with this World Investment Forum. So this is the first one, and we'll do on other forums organized by partner agencies. And we can also have annual cluster conferences that's hosted by the equal partners of agencies involved. And the setting up of a kind of online communications and collaboration platform that will allow members to exchange on topical and regional issues and the issues of kind of a WIDA's newsletter and kind of a news flash and a tweets. So this is kind of a rough idea, the platform and the means that we can communicate to the investment and development world. So WIDA can also organize kind of webinars, both clusters based on and cross-cutting, as well as regional and global in nature. So furthermore, WIDA can also have clusters that will advance collaborative projects within areas of focus. For example, to identify and address policies and regulatory bottlenecks to investment for development through public-private and expert projects. We'll discuss the institutional setup among the funding agencies. They are all presented here. And in the near future, we may find an occasion to formally launch this initiative or this coalition, maybe in the first half of next year. And we may establish later on some clusters, for example, investment promotion facilitation cluster, investment financing cluster, investment treaties entry protection cluster, value chain transformation cluster, and so on and so forth. But these are all in the preliminary thinking. We need kind of discussion, including today, to build up such an institutional setup and to be on the same wavelengths marching forward. Now, back to you, Sean. This is the rough idea that we have been discussed among the agencies and through the exchange of emails.
Great. Thank you very much, James, for setting the scene. And obviously, we hope you can stay with us throughout the conversation, but we do know that it's possible there may be urgencies related to the World Investment Forum. So we'll forgive you.
Another 3 to open.
If you have to drop. So, Minister, I'm now going to turn to you, Minister Sokchandra Sophia. Thank you very much for joining us. Many of the organizations on this panel have been involved in one way or another with Cambodia's investment for development journey. And so we'd love it if you could share with us some of the highlights of that journey and perhaps how public and private organizations such as ours can best support you in taking that further.
Good afternoon. Greeting from Cambodia. I think, the one who is the most remote from Geneva. Before starting, allow me to recognize Natalie. We met a long time ago. I will not tell you when, because it will not make us young anymore. And I have accepted to join you because I realized that among participants will be representative from OECD as well as from the World Economic Forum. I mention this because I am the Secretary General of the Cambodian IPA. And in the past, we used to work a lot with World Bank and IFC. And it's more recently that we start to have cooperation with OECD. We have done, OECD have done in the region, the IPR, Investment Policy Review. They have done for many ASEAN countries, including Cambodia. I have to say that it was for me a very interesting experience. We have a lot of exchange of view, and I mention this because Cambodia will have a new law, a new investment law in the coming days. Everything has been done. I would say maybe the law is on the desk of His Majesty the King. He may be now, when we are talking, he may be signing it into law. And I have no problem to say that through those various discussions with OECD, they didn't convince me completely, but there are some element that is in the new law that came from those discussions. More recently, 2 years ago, we start to work with the World Economic Forum team. And again, I have discovered other things to think about. And more practically, because I'm very result-oriented, not good in seminar or whatsoever, although I met Natalie in a seminar. I prefer the field, but with World Economic Forum, we have started a project. I like it very much. It's about a supplier database. It sounds not sexy, not really appealing, but I think that it will help both investors, foreign investors, but at the same time, it will encourage local SMEs to upgrade their production, and eventually Cambodia will be able to do something that is missing, and it's happened in many LDCs, in many developing countries. I want to mention the shortage or the absence of backward linkages between FDIs and the local industry. So some good news from Cambodia. According to UNCTAD, in 2020, globally, there was a decrease of around 35% of the FDI. But the good news is that in ASEAN region, it was not that bad. The decrease was only 25%. And the very, very good news is that Cambodia, despite the COVID, in that context, was doing quite well, because last year we have a decrease like other people, but only of 12%. So it's not too bad. I mention this because one of the initiative or one of the measures that come regularly with OECD as well as the World Economic Forum, and I personally, we in Cambodia personally have completely adopted, is the concept of investment facilitation. It's a simple word, but it's crazy how governments and agencies so far still didn't took measures to make a more enabling environment in their respective country. I know that I have only 5 minutes. I have already spent 2 minutes, and I like to share the good news. And again, maybe coming out from those discussions with some development partners, including the OECD and the World Economic Forum. We have finally adopted the law, and we are in a real trend of what you are discussing about sustainability, about green environment. And to put words in action, it is in the law. In the current law, soon it will be the formal law, we have list activities and sectors eligible for incentive, for fiscal incentive. But in the new law, in addition to those, I would say, traditional sectors and activities, we have include environment management, protection of biodiversity, circular economy as sectors to be, activities to be eligible for incentive. Green energy, technology contributing to climate change, adaptation and mitigation, eligible for incentive. And because we don't know what will happen tomorrow, there is a provision saying all the sectors and investment activities, not least in this law, deemed by the royal government to have potential for socio-economic development. Just to tell you, we have put into the law provision in order to contribute to the global sustainability. In addition to that, in the current law, we have basic, I would call incentive, fiscal incentive. Those, the first one is tax holiday, 6 to 9 years. In the new law, we have it, but we have create new incentive. And the word came from our friends from OECD when we were discussing. They were referring to smart incentive. And I told them, come on, smart doesn't mean anything. But now I'm talking, when I'm presenting the new law, I am very proud to tell them, well, we come out with smart incentive. And one of the smart incentive, you will like it, is that for those companies who spend 100 US for skill training or provision of food court, canteen, nursery, and other facilities for workers, they will be able to deduct 150 from the tax base. So this is our way to contribute to sustainability, inclusiveness, better work condition, including gender, SDG gender, because some of the expense are not for men, sorry, but rather for female workers. So this is what I call the one of the smart incentive.
Thank you, Minister. We need to come back to you in a few minutes. Sorry.
Last minute.
Mm-hmm.
That last minute, just to tell you, as we come from a country with an agricultural background, to tell you how FDI has made the life of people who used to live in the countryside. We have given them an opportunity to have a better life, especially women. When those women were working in the paddy field, they depend on the sky, they depend on God. But now working in factory, of course, you say better to work in an office with a tie, but Compared to the work in the farm, there is uncertainty. Working as in a factory every month, regularly, you have an income. This is one thing that is important. Secondly, for women, as a farmer, you have no status. The society don't recognize you. If you divorce, you have nothing. But with formal work, then you exist. And bit by bit, our government provide more social protection. We have introduced, for example, the health insurance. It's something new for you. It's just normal part of life, but for us, it's brand new. The pension fund is something brand new. The injury, work injury is something new. So just to tell you how FDI, people always consider FDI foreigners coming. No, I see how FDI has contributed to the betterment of people's life. I will stop here, and I am just impatient to listen to what you will discuss about WIDA, about the alliance. Thank you for your attention. Hi, Natalie.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for being very frank and very concrete on some of the issues. I think you're a very good lead into our opening business speaker, who is Marcus Till from Bosch. So Marcus, Bosch has been clearly investing around the world, and you personally, I think, have been a champion for driving the maximum development benefit from that investment. Where do you see the opportunity for technical agencies such as those on this call to support that goal? And if you're able to turn your camera on, that would be amazing.
Yeah, last time it just crashed, so I'll try it again. Otherwise, I'll speak without the video.
Okay, that's fine. Just speak. That's
okay. So thank you very much for the kind invitation to speak today on behalf of the private sector. I'd like to touch upon three aspects of the matter. First, why is it useful to collaborate between different organizations? Second, why should investors or even better industry organizations be at the core of such collaboration? And third, what should be the core targets of such a collaboration? That is only high-level coordination or also to carry out more operational activities. So throughout my intervention, I'll take the effort to establish an automotive industry in Africa as an example. But before I come to the three aspects mentioned, let me shortly lay out 5 key facts about the automotive industry in Africa today. 1, Africa accounts for almost 20% of the world population, but only produces 1% of the vehicles in the world. 2, the automotive industry is very often at the forefront of innovation on a global scale. 3, the automotive industry is a sector that is globalized, needs scale and collaboration across countries, even continents, uniting more than 500 to 1,000 or even more than 1,000 companies to provide components and services before even one vehicle is sold. So it is a very complex industry involving a lot of stakeholders. 4, mobility is the basis of economic and more generally human activities. And 5, last but not least, it provides a significant amount of jobs. In the case of Africa, doing a rough comparison with the European Union, and assuming that Africa could easily be producing 5 million vehicles per year, tens of millions of direct jobs and a multiple of that could be created as part of an automotive industry in Africa, mostly for production, also for Africa. So back to the first mentioned aspect. Why is it useful, in our opinion, to collaborate between different organizations? So first, an industry which relies on cross-border collaboration needs free trade agreements, efficient customs operations, help with putting coordinated industrial policies, as well as adequate education financial systems in place, to name just a few aspects. And just as excellently has just mentioned, I can assure you we don't need incentives to actually provide education or canteens or anything else to our workers. We just want them to be happy and also then be more productive. The OECD, UNCTAD, UNIDO, but also regional blocs and organizations such as the EU, African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, and or the African Union, in our case, etc., would all need to align their activities and ensure the most effective way of implementing the investment reform efforts that are needed to make the dream of establishing an automotive industry across Africa and integrate it into the global value chains a reality. In our experience, also as a member of the African Association of Automotive Manufacturers, a lot of players and stakeholders are actively pursuing those targets, albeit often independently and sometimes even with conflicting messages. Unfortunately, that often leads to governments not knowing what to really do, and then rather do nothing than do one of perceives two or more options. Concluding on this first aspect, a strong collaboration between different international regional organizations is highly desirable to ensure that an approach is aligned and also communicated with one voice to the relevant countries and regions. Now to the second aspect, why should investors or even better industry organizations be at the core of such a collaboration? So first, whilst the effort relies on collaboration by all stakeholders, the private sector will only invest when the long-term boundary conditions are stable in order to ensure long-term sustainable operations and business. Industry hardly ever go easily and quickly in or out of countries, not even with extensive incentive packages. And I can assure you, incentive packages for us are the icing on the cake. But the right policies, in this case, right automotive policies, coordinated across countries, are the key to the matter. So what the criteria for private sector companies are to invest should therefore be at the core of any such initiative and collaboration. And that does, however, not mean that the private sector should be the only one leading such efforts, but rather that the collaboration should be guided by how the private sector thinks about investments. Third and lastly, what should be the core targets of such a collaboration be? Only high-level coordination, also to carry out more operational activities. In our experience, there are a lot of white papers, plans, and resolutions out there that deal with matters such as the industrialization of Africa or emerging markets. There are also organizations that are tasked with the implementation of such documents. As mentioned earlier, a first element of the mentioned collaboration should ensure alignment. But even more importantly, such collaboration should also foster implementation. I mentioned free trade agreements and efficient customs processes already as examples. However, there are many challenges to be overcome to create an automotive industry in Africa, also with regard to financing, affordability, ecological aspects, and much more. Today, a lot of organizations also work on tackling such challenges, albeit often in silos. So if a coordination would also help to put all puzzle pieces together with regard to implementation, I'm confident we could jointly industrialize Africa at least more quickly. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marcus, for that guidance on how to make this, I guess, practically useful. So let's turn now to some of the leading organizations who provide policy advice, technical support, and much more for their quick thoughts on how to give some impetus to this proposed deeper collaboration. So I'm going to go first to Ivan from the World Bank. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Sean and colleagues and high-level guests. As a multilateral development institution that provides analysis and technical advice to countries on investment policy, excuse me. The World Bank is interested to engage with other partners and stakeholders in this initiative to increase collaboration on sustainable investment. FDI policy and promotion, along with other dimensions of private sector development, are central to the response to the economic dimensions of the COVID-19 pandemic. Countries are striving to achieve lasting economic growth without degrading the environment or aggravating equality. Therefore, the recovery needs to be green, resilient, and inclusive. And to achieve this, urgent investments are needed with complementary involvement from the public and private sectors and international organisations. Hence this initiative. Turning to the first two questions of the three to be addressed here, namely, how can organisations best work together to achieve the shared objective of sustainable investment, and what are the elements to consider moving forward and create a mechanism for this collaboration? The emergence of investment policy as a discipline bridging national economic objectives and legal, regulatory and institutional measures to attract, retain, grow and link FDI to domestic economies is still nascent in many countries. Investment policy is multidisciplinary, and so the relevant partner institutions within government are many. Investment policy is dealt with by several ministries and agencies such as trade, economy, sectoral ministries that work on industrial policy, and others, as well as regulatory agencies, such as one-stop shops, and promotion agencies, such as IPAs. There are also several private sector actors in place, such as industry peak bodies, investor councils, public-private dialogue mechanisms, and so on. This diversity is also reflected in the diversity of the stakeholders that are brought together around this initiative. Each are of different mandate, governance, and scale. Therefore, the form of the collaboration, while being enriched by this diversity, we also need to reflect these differences to ensure that the contribution of each stakeholder makes use of their comparative advantage while understanding their respective mandates. It's important and useful that this initiative includes stakeholders that work with governments, those that work with the private sector, and those that work with both, such as the World Bank Group. In countries, achieving sustainability goals require a specific mix of policies to help the private sector transition, with two important areas being helping firms and industries decarbonise by integrating renewable energies and adopting low carbon technologies, and supporting countries as they adopt policies to attract investment and increase inclusiveness and sustainability. Identifying and capitalising on these reform opportunities will be challenging for many countries. International development partners and collaboration through initiatives such as this one can provide support through such measures as capturing and disseminating good practices, collaboration on data sharing and tools, and knowledge curation. Thank you very much. I hand it back to you, Sean.
Great, thanks, Ivan. Let's go straight to OECD and Anna.
Thanks, Sean and James also for the invitation to discuss by this launching of the new Global Alliance. And thanks, Excellency, for your kind words with the work of the OECD. It's a pleasure to be here with all the partners that are here and also friends. We believe that this is the right moment to make a collective effort among different actors working in this area to help countries not only to increase private investment, particularly international investment, but also to strengthen its sustainable impact. There are some important elements that this platform should consider to ensure its success. I will do a short presentation first on the context, where does the world stand and what the world needs, some reflection of what could an alliance on investment for development do to satisfy this need, and I will conclude identifying some elements that I think that are key for the success of this platform. Where does the world stand? I think as was mentioned before by Chan and James, it is important to situate this launch in the context of having enough finance for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And we know that even before COVID, financing this was not enough. The OECD predicted that annually 2.5 trillion are missing to achieve the 2030 agenda. And now also looking closely to the FDI, that is one of the inflows to fulfill this gap. We see that the flows really have fell, and now in UNCTAD just released this morning the new trends, and we will also do the same at the end of the month. And it is clear that there is an opportunity right now because flows are increasing, started to increase the last semester, and now are bumping. That means that let's see in this complex context how we can contribute to this resilient and sustainable recovery. Keeping market open and implementing investment facilitation measures is important, but not enough, because government need to increase the flows of investment, but at the same time, they need to increase the quality of it. And that means maximizing the FDI benefit to mitigate potential adverse effect. In other words, more private investment is needed, but we need to realize the potential. And I think that all the organizations that are here are working in some way or another to doing that. We have this launching this FDI quality initiative about measuring the impact of FDI, but also the policies in different clusters, and also launching different works that are focusing on how we can contribute to the sustainable impact. And we would like to bring this OECD work on investment to its potential platform, keeping in mind that attracting more investment is the first step to make it sustainable. Allow me to share a view of what could a World Investment for Development Alliance contribute to satisfy this need that we think we all agree that is here. Different participants are working on helping countries to mobilize investment that enhance the impact of investment on sustainable development from different perspectives and with different partnership. I think that this is what Ivan just said. A better coordination and collaboration will make our work more impactful. The coordination and collaboration could be among international organizations, not only developing jointly some knowledge or providing more evidence, but also, as was just mentioned by Marcus, it could be helping countries to implement some of the advices that different organizations are suggesting to them. The collaboration with business, academics, NGO will also strengthen the impact of the work, exploring different ways of enriching the knowledge and the way of delivering outputs. The collaboration should aim to increase the synergies and work jointly. In this context, I think that the role of donors and countries will be key, because I think that donors have also the capacity to finance some work jointly. And when we have this experience, has been a very successful experience. And also countries also could ask how we can work together to advise them in the way that our Excellencies was explaining at the beginning. But we're not there, we're not there. I think that this platform could be a good input to this kind of need of collaboration and increasing the synergies. And I will focus the last 30 seconds of my presentation to see what I think that we need to take into account if we want to really ensure some success. And I would say that a World Investment Development Alliance should add value to the existing platform on investment for sustainable development. The value added will be the coordination, collaboration aspect that I have just mentioned and was mentioned by others, and potentially to increase areas where different actors could work together. If the aim is co-create, co-develop, and co-implement, in the words of James, I think that it should co-owned by all participants and being open to others who want to join. Each year, one partner should offer to lead the platform, and others should contribute to the year leader in a way, and should be light in terms of resources, because I think that donors and countries need more coordination, collaboration, but they don't need another new actor here. They need like that we act together but not create a new one. And I'm sure that more need to be discussed about the activities, the way of organizing, the structure, and we are happy to be participate, continue this discussion, receive more input from our OECD constituencies, and I'm very glad to be here. I think that is the right time to launch it, and the success will depend on this value added and this engagement that we all have in creating this kind of platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Great points. Definitely stuff to follow up there. So let's go to International Trade Center. Rajesh.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, James. We in the International Trade Center, ITC, which is the Joint Technical Assistance Agency of the World Trade Organization and the United Nations, see WIDA as a timely and important initiative. There is urgent need to support revitalization of the global investment, especially in the post-pandemic phase. Many international organizations and private sector players are active in supporting revitalization of global investment. Better synergies could be developed through exchange of information and closer cooperation. And therefore, ITC welcomes and fully supports the WIDA initiative and looks forward to contributing to its activities. ITC has been working on investment on the ground in Africa, such as developing business investment partnerships, building capacity for developing and implementing investment promotion strategies, reviewing investment regulations to reduce procedural inefficiencies, developing reform options based on necessity and feasibility, and supporting sourcing from local, micro and small and medium enterprises, and incentivizing value addition to domestic SMEs. Second, we have a dedicated project on investment facilitation for development. Many of the agencies present in this meeting, for example, UNCTAD, World Economic Forum, World Bank, OECD, ESCAP, WIPA, they have participated and contributed immensely to our project activities, and we will continue collaborating with the agencies, both at macro and micro level, in implementation of this dedicated project. To conclude, technical assistance and capacity building are key to support governments in developing and the least developed countries and their investment promotion agencies to enhance transparency and streamline regulatory processes to improve investment climate and facilitate inward investment, towards which VIDA's collaborative approach can actively contribute. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajesh, for your continued commitment to collaboration, which we've all seen. So I think we're going to change gear a tiny bit now. We're going to move to WIPA, the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies. And Fahad, you've provided some important energy to this effort, so over to you.
Yes, thank you, Sean. Excellencies and dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's our great pleasure to join you today. I would like to thank you all on behalf of WIPA, and WIPA members who are leading economic recovery efforts as governments worldwide looking to foreign direct investment as a priority. WIPA overall promotes the value and benefits of cooperation, shared knowledge and learning among its members, and prides itself in working closely with all the FDI ecosystem stakeholders as consultative committee members, funding partners, and supporters of WIPA programs. Today, our meeting is convened at a time that we think very crucial, where the COVID-19 pandemic has brought governments and private sector closer together. The deep realization of this is that we are all in it together. Nobody can face it alone, and that has already opened actually our eyes to create value in new ways and promises to shape future partnership like the one we're talking about and discussing today. That's why WIPA is glad to be one of the founding partners of this initiative, to be a form of a global alliance among key FDI ecosystem players, which represent the policy, businesses, IPAs, and academia, among others. Thanks to Unctad and World Economic Forum strategic leadership, this initiative to form the alliance will leverage our collective action at a larger scale and faster pace to accelerate the pace towards a future-fit FDI policies, investment promotion, and private sector participation in achieving the 2030 agenda. As a founding participant in this alliance, WIDA, we at WIPA are aiming to few points here, and I'd like to make that clear. Strengthening the role of IPAs as a leading community of practice that bridge the gap among investors, governments, and communities. Enhancing the efficiency of effectiveness of WIPA capacity building programs in partnership with alliance members and constituencies. Support national, regional, and global initiatives to deliver FDI projects that contribute to the sustainable growth, resilience, and prosperity of nations, cities, and communities worldwide. Drive a broader and more consistent dialogue with leading global investors around de-risking investment into 2030 agenda. On all that context, we look forward to work collaboratively to facilitate and create new opportunities for all participants to serve their constituencies and the shared global goals of the Agenda 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So we're now going to turn to our two regional organizations. We'll start first with the AUC. Charles, please.
Thank you so much, Sean. We at the African Union Commission, we are also glad to be part and parcel of this process of building the World Investment for Development Alliance. We believe that this initiative has come at a very opportune time when the world is trying to find ways of building back better and resilient from the COVID-19 pandemic. I think previous speakers have spoken to this at length. But coming to Africa, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the continent recorded its first recession in 25 years with a GDP of 2.1% contraction only in 2020, and coupled with a huge deterioration over the years, especially in social indicators. The IMF, I think, has made some estimates to say that probably Africa will require 285 billion just to go back to the levels where it was in 2019 before the pandemic. So whilst there has been considerable efforts to improve the investment climate in the continent, the pandemic has also posed an unprecedented threat to financing Africa's development by creating and also exacerbating persisting vulnerabilities. This comes at a backdrop where Africa has been trying to make sure that the continent attracts investments. I will cite two here. For example, we have the Pan-African Investment Code that we did in 2016 with the support of most of the organizations that are here with us here. And also we have just launched the African Continental Free Trade Area. So we believe that the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is currently at initial stages of implementation, can reach Africa's potential for the type of trade and investments that supports sustainable economic development. However, we believe that the AfCFTA requires adequate flanking measures, including adequate levels of investments for it to allow Africa to achieve its development goals under both the UN SDGs as well as our domestic Agenda 2063. So in this regard, sustainable investments will have a crucial role to play. And to add, Mr. Moderator, Sean, progress is fast being made to negotiate an investment protocol under the AfCFTA. So with the coming in of this initiative, we believe it will present an ideal multi-stakeholder framework aiming at strengthening extensive partnerships and cooperation between all partner agencies that are here, and will allow us to work effectively in mobilizing resources as well as to benefit of the renewed growth of the continent. We also see WIDA or wider. I think as we develop, we have to decide whether it will be WIDA or wider, responding to the need for a dedicated stakeholder platform for international investment relations, particularly relevant today, when I think the organizations that are gathered here need to deliver as one. We need to speak the same language. We need to be consistent in our messages because I believe we serve the similar clientele. So as organizations, I think we need to speak with a similar voice, one voice towards what policies we are advocating. So we believe that this platform is going to achieve that goal. We also believe that by working together, we will create a transformational partnership that will jointly identify, define, and address key investment challenges and opportunities, and foster and accelerate sustainable transformation that is going to yield the sustainable development impacts that we are seeking, that investments needs to make impact in the African continent and also the world at large. So you also referred to the need to see what could be some of the key elements for this to succeed. I think the speakers before me have been eloquent and have spoken a lot to that, but I just want to indicate two. Number one, inclusivity. It will be very important that such a platform to succeed, we need to consider all the relevant stakeholders to be part and parcel of the process. I think colleagues that have spoken before I was talking have already alluded to the need to include the private sector as well as the public sector in this. But we will add that the issues of gender, youth, will also need to be considered to say how does investment impact that. Then finally, Sean, the issue that I think was highlighted in the introduction to make sure that this platform has adequate sub-themes that cover all elements of investment. I think that will be also a very important key for this platform to succeed. So with these remarks, let me thank you and stop here.
Thank you very much, Charles. And if we have time at the end of this, we'll organize a quick poll of the pronunciation of WIDA or WIDA. So now we're going to turn to UNESCO. Rupa, I think you're not quite as far away as the minister, but still some distance. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's a great pleasure for UNESCO to be joining this important initiative led by UNCTAD and the World Economic Forum. Why is this very timely and important, as all the other speakers have mentioned? Well, we know that the investment landscape, both globally and also in our region, in the Asia Pacific, has become more challenging and uncertain. But we are all aware that investment, particularly cross-border investment flows, are needed to address the financing gap that most countries are facing. And this gap has only widened after the COVID-19 pandemic. So just from that perspective, in terms of facilitating and promoting FDI in a sustainable manner, this is extremely timely, topical. In terms of how UNESCO is aligned with the vision and the mission of this particular initiative, well, we have been delivering technical assistance and capacity building services to our developing country member states to enhance their ability to promote and facilitate FDI. So we're completely aligned in terms of the objective. And just to highlight certain things that we've been doing, together with the World Economic Forum, we've developed an outward FDI policy toolkit for home country sustainable development, in fact, which will be launched later this week. We are developing a policy guidebook to promote digital FDI. We've developed templates for general and sector-specific FDI indicators to enable countries to measure the contribution of an FDI project to national sustainable development priorities. In fact, one of the partners, the OECD, is basically having a macro level tool, and we are complementing that with a micro assessment tool. So we are also aligned in terms of complementarities with many of the partner organizations within this initiative. And also more broadly, if I look at the work of UNESCO and particularly our division, we are looking at SME integration into global value chains, mainstreaming of gender into policies. So obviously, many of the things that we are discussing in WIDA or WIDA are quite relevant for us. In terms of other areas of synergy that I see and commitment, as we are aware that the UN Secretary General has talked about boosting partnerships across the UN system and with other international organizations. This is one of the commitments in the new common agenda of the UN system. So the WIDA actually is a realization of this commitment by providing a formal platform to promote collaboration and exchange among organizations working on investment for development issues, whether it's global, regional, national. The Alliance will really strengthen our ability to support countries in accessing sustainable investment flows. And how will that be possible? By making possible exchange of information and experiences among collaborating organizations, so there'll be greater coherence in activities across members and leveraging of each other's expertise and areas of comparative advantage. Such knowledge and information exchange will also, I believe, enable identification of areas requiring technical assistance and capacity building, maybe reduce duplication of effort, tapping of each other's expertise, and hopefully facilitate the effective implementation of projects and programs where they are most needed. So in concluding, while the formalization of the Alliance will take its due course, and we know working modalities, governing framework, thematic areas all have to be fleshed out, we are very happy to be a member of this Alliance. We look forward to collaborating more closely with all the members and to promoting the cause of sustainable investment. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Rupa. So finally, we're going to turn to the International Institute for Sustainable Development. And Natalie, the pressure is now on you to outshine all the previous speakers.
That will be actually very difficult, Sean, and thank you again to the core organizers for inviting all of us. And of course, it was a great pleasure to see His Excellency again after so many years, unfortunately only virtually. I think I have very little time, and we were all asked here to propose 3 or a few key issues in the this post-pandemic era that the alliance could address across the various clusters in this case to advance investment for sustainable development. And we heard that the clusters could include investment promotion and facilitation, investment financing, investment treaties, and value chain transformation. Now, across these clusters, I want to propose 3 key issues. The first relates to the climate crisis. The investment community really needs to come together to develop effective and viable options to accelerate the phase out of fossil fuels and the transition to a cleaner economic model. We know that in 2009, the world community made a $100 billion pledge in Copenhagen, and implementation of the pledge has still been insufficient, but the public investment actually remains crucial. So I think our alliance should, on the one hand, encourage governments to contribute their fair share and also support innovation on the use of public finance to innovate and boost private finance mobilization rates by employing more guarantees and credit enhancement mechanisms, for instance. At the same time, we need to ensure that policies and legal frameworks are put in place to incentivize private investment into mitigation and adaptation activities. And this, of course, involves clear signals from governments through their national and international investment policies. The alliance, I think, needs to complement and support the overarching emission reduction targets set in the climate negotiations. Second, the second issue, I think, is that investments need to be fair and inclusive. And we've heard this from the other previous speakers. We need to make sure that international corporations act responsibly when they invest, especially in countries where governments have insufficient capacity to ensure that investors respect the law and international standards. Under the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, companies have a responsibility to undertake human rights due diligence. And increasingly, governments are adopting mandatory legislation to ensure that companies comply with due diligence standards. In our alliance, I think we need to ensure that international investment frameworks also support responsible investment behavior and set out effective compliance processes. And finally, we need to work together to develop new approaches to fill the multi-billion-dollar or trillion-dollar finance gap into infrastructure investments. Infrastructure is at the core of the SDGs, ranging from access to water, food, and energy to health and education. We need to ensure that governments understand and opt for infrastructure that is sustainable, that it serves not only its immediate goal, but is also designed to harness a wide range of co-benefits. Integrating nature-based solutions into infrastructure projects is particularly valuable because nature provides for valuable ecosystem services, allowing to save money while protecting and conserving nature. So we need to make the business case for sustainable over traditional infrastructure and assist governments in developing the tools needed to ensure that the best option over the life cycle of the investment, including through innovative approaches to sustainable public procurement. Now, I think that's the time is up, and I hope this contributed a little bit to our thinking for the future of this alliance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. And I should mention that the Academy for International Business were going to be with us, but had to drop, but they send their support. Yes, I'm afraid we are out of time. So big thank you to everyone. It does sound as though there's some enthusiasm for working together in alliance. Clearly, details to be worked out and ironed out along the way. From the foreign perspective, I can share that we do see a lot of value here. We recognize, of course, that we'll be able to contribute more and less depending on different areas, but I think that's the beauty of a flexible approach. We had planned to bring in questions from the audience, but luckily, given the time, we don't have any. So clearly, everybody was convinced by everything that you all said today. Maybe I can just ask the Minister and Marcus whether you can maybe give us a thumbs up or thumbs down if we seem to be heading in the right direction. You're reserving judgment. Okay. As I say, I believe we need to...
From my side, Marcus is thumbs up.
Okay, wonderful. There we go. Thank you. So very, very grateful to everybody for your time. I do believe we have a direction of travel. Our next step is clearly to operationalize this, though taking the time to build for the long term, and we will work with all of you in doing that. Thank you very much, everybody.